So why would God, though, create a world in which his creation are able to do such a thing, are able to sin and go against him, and essentially live lives that are more or less miserable because of it?
Yeah. And Prodigal Son, every time confession comes up, if it's in a meeting, someone's asking about it at a youth group, whatever, it's a masterpiece for the stages and development and purpose of confession, like from A to Z. It's almost as if Jesus knew what he was talking about.
Oh yeah. So
welcome back, Abed and Keto.
Oh, thank you so much.
How was your trip?
It was a wonderful trip,
Italy,
thank God.
Jubilee.
Yes, great trip. We went at the best time. I think we went at the best time because late February, it was very slow. It was kind of cold.
Was it rainy?
Only a couple days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Assisi, it rained for practically a whole day,
Oh,
which was
man.
very nice, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Because like you have to walk around outside a lot.
It was light rain. It was light rain, very foggy. Assisi is beautiful as such. In the fog, it's like just so much more like medieval. You know,
You love that, dude.
I love that stuff. Yeah. Assisi is my favorite place on planet Earth, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
more than Aklish?
You're putting me on the spot here, aren't you? There's a lot of
Honestly-
people I'd have to answer to if I answer that one.
His favorite place on planet Earth.
Well, then think, man.
No, but listen, Rabban Hormuz is unbelievable.
Robin Hermes is unbelievable.
Like being there, yeah. I mean,
Planet Earth.
planet Earth.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Are there Aklish and I watching right now, you think?
Of course. There's got to be one.
So last week we had a high school girls retreat with Epic, and I wanted to share something that I experienced there, and I thought we can actually discuss it here. So we did a mass at the retreat, obviously, and I couldn't do confession before the mass. Like that's just how the schedule worked. So I told the girls, I said, look, we're gonna have confession later. And I know most of the girls, and they all come to confession a lot, like at church. And so I said, obviously, if you're in the state of grace, you can receive the Eucharist. If you're in the state of mortal sin, just you can wait till later. And so basically, during the Mass, as I was giving communion, I was shocked because 2 out of 37 girls received the Eucharist.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was really shocked. And so afterward, later on in the day, we had a time slot for examination of conscience. And I explained a lot to them about what is mortal sin, what does it mean to be in the state of grace. And it turns out that a lot of them were actually just confused about it. And they should have received the Eucharist. And so I think that we need to discuss this, because I don't want people to be depriving themselves of the grace of God in the sacrament, the source and summit of our life. Like Father Andy mentioned, I think a couple episodes ago, that the Eucharist forgives our venial sins, actually, and so we should not deprive ourselves of the Eucharist. So there's a misunderstanding of mortal sin and of venial sin, but I think we have to start by talking about sin in general, right? Like, what does sin do to the human soul, and why we should avoid it?
Yeah, good. I mean, that's really actually really surprising.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. And unfortunate.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing that they are so concerned with the state of their soul, right? But it's not good because I told them, like, you're not balanced spiritually.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's funny though, because previous generations, hardly ever go to confession, if ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I know plenty of people that go to church regularly and they haven't been to confession for decades.
Yeah.
Versus like a newer generation, which is reacting to that, which is a healthy reaction to an extent. Like younger people go to confession a lot more often, which I'm very happy about. But then you do run into this problem where it's an over dependence on the sacrament of confession to feel like you're secure, or to feel like you're reconciled with God, when you actually likely are already reconciled with God, but imperfect, and you can receive the Eucharist, but then overdoing it on this feeling that we're always more like mortally guilty about something. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is sin?
Well, on a level of a definition, rejecting the goodness of God in some way, turning from God in some way. There's obviously more serious ways to do that. Rejecting God's grace in some way. How else would you guys describe it?
The Greek word for it, in the gospel,
Hamartia.
hamartia, okay, means missing the mark.
Mm-hmm.
So that means it's about order. There's a human nature that we have that we're created by God according to, and it's supposed to be, it's somehow, because we're in the image of God, somehow our behavior, when properly ordered, is imitating the behavior of God. Like we act the way that God acts because we're created in his likeness and in his image, right? When we miss the mark, that's what we call sin. When we're acting ungodly, that's essentially what sin is.
So sin is something against God, but it's also something against yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're not acting according to how you were created to act.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to be Catholic to sin. You don't have to be Christian to sin. Sin goes against something that's engraved in our very being, in our very core, and how we should live and how we should act.
Yeah.
And Scripture gives us a very important history of how sin entered the world and what sin has, the damage and destruction it's done to humanity.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful story. It's a sad story, but it's also a beautiful story because we know how the story ends with redemption and in Christ. So should
I
we
remember.
start? What?
Yeah, sorry. No.
No, I was
Finish.
going to say. So should we start from the
Oh.
beginning?
Yeah. But just on that note, I remember during seminary time, we learned in one of our classes how, like, why is a sin a sin? It's not just that God picked random actions, like as if he had a dartboard and there's all the actions in the world and he just threw a dart and it lands on, okay, murder, that's a sin, and kindness is not a sin, lust is a sin. It's that these things actually are sins because they hurt us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they are the commandments of
And they're
God.
offensive to God because we're his image.
Yeah,
We're hurting
exactly.
God's image, right? We're damaging God's image.
Yeah.
Just like, if we rip up, if I rip up then I would never do this, obviously I love your mom, but if I ripped up an image of your mom, that would offend you,
Yeah. So why would God, though, create a world in which his creation are able to do such a thing, are able to sin and go against him, and essentially live lives that are more or less miserable because of it, very unhappy lives? Why is that the case? Why can we even sin in the first place?
Well, it's because we're free beings. If we didn't have the opportunity to sin, then we wouldn't be free. And the reality that we have the opportunity to say yes or no points to what we actually have. He creates us as his sons and his daughters. He brings the rest of creation forward. But the only thing we have, and we've said this before in an episode, and I think it's a very insightful thing to think about, is the ability to say yes or no. If we don't have that, then we're just, just like the other parts of creation that don't reflect really God's image as fully as we do. And so that's what distinguishes us. That's what makes us human, is this freedom, this free will, this ability to say yes or no.
And ultimately, it's the ability to choose to love. And that's what it's all about. God is love, and God created us out of love. He willingly chose to create us out of love. And so we have to also choose him. And we have to choose to not sin, and we have to choose to love him.
I have a question also I think we should maybe think about too. Oftentimes, like in our prayers, when we're asking for forgiveness for our sins, right? We'll say, forgive us our debts and sins. So debt then is, from this picture of sin that we're thinking about right now, debt is a consequence now of having sinned. So how does debt work?
I've thought about this a lot because the way that I think about sin is in kind of the way that I mentioned it earlier, which is imperfection, essentially a disorder in like the philosophical sense, like something is not properly ordered, right? So like a chair with one of the legs is like half cut off or something like that, right? Like it's still a chair, but it's not as functional. So when we sin, we become, we're like chiseling away a part of our soul, a part of ourself, whatever it is that makes us less able to function as human beings, which is a lot more glorious than we are in our state because of sin. But then there is also this, and so redemption means becoming whole again, right? Saint Irenaeus, the glory of God is man fully alive. That redemption is God putting us all back together. Sin scatters us from within and again from each other and from God, and then redemption is the whole picture coming back together again. The puzzle pieces fitting, and then you see the whole thing again. There is this aspect, though, especially in the Gospel of Matthew, about sin as a debt, and so then now we're talking about sin as a legal infringement. And even Jesus, when he, like you said, when gives us the Our Father, the word debt is used there, and a debt obviously requires repayment, right? So I think I don't have a perfect answer to this. I'm not going to lie, but I see it as a two-tiered thing. Like one builds on the other. It's both, I think, a legal infringement, and so something that needs to be redeemed, literally redeemed, bought back, on top of, or let's say on the foundation of this general scattering of this perfect thing that God created that needs to be put back together.
Yeah, I think going off of that, it's pointing to how our relationship with God isn't just creator and creature, it's father and children. And to have a family form means a covenant has to be enacted. So if a covenant is broken, now you're talking about debt. Now you're talking about what someone owes somebody else. And obviously, like I was kind of saying a moment ago, we can't repay God with anything. We don't have anything we can give him except our yes or our no. So I think it just also speaks to the fact that we're in a covenantal relationship with God when we are asking him to forgive our debts. And then that's where the beauty comes in of God's initiative. I'm going to pay the debt that you owe. That's just a radical kind of love.
As one of you.
Yeah, as one of you on top of that.
Yeah.
So rather than seeing it as breaking the rules, you're incurring a debt, right? Is that a good way of looking at it?
It's not us suggesting that imagery. That's the Bible.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand, like, when that happens, what is it that we owe specifically? We owe our yes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We owe our yes. We here's how, like medieval theology would have talked about it. By being created, we already owe God everything, because the fact of our being is a gift that God gives to us. It's not something that we earned, obviously. We didn't exist to earn existence. Okay. So that God brought us into that he created us at all means that we already owe him our entire selves. God gave us ourselves as a gift to us. And the most proper thing to do with a gift is to gift back to the giver, right? And that's what forms a relationship. I give you a Christmas gift, and out of my love for you, not because I feel like I have to, but out of my love for you, I give you a Christmas gift. If you love me back, probably you'll give me back a Christmas gift, right? And then there's this exchange of gifts, okay? The exchange of gifts in the grand scheme of things is that God gives us ourselves, and he gives us himself by creating us in his image and likeness, right? So he's sharing with us his own joy. That's what the whole purpose of creation is. Creates us so that he can extend his joy to us. The response, how do we make good of that joy? We only make good of that joy by giving ourselves back to him, because there's the act of love. There's that mutual gift of self, which is that loving relationship, which is our joy, ultimately. When we work against that, we're working against that love and that relationship, and that's what we call a sin. Whatever breaks that relationship and destroys our capacity for joy, which can only be found by our relationship with God. It's spoken of as a debt because we already owe God everything, and now we owe Him more than we can give Him, because we not only are we supposed to give Him ourselves, but now we're supposed to also make up for our sin, which we can't do. We already owe Him everything. Now we owe Him everything plus one, which is sin. And so God becomes man and redeems the whole thing for us.
So how to get people, because it's like when you sin, right? And your main goal is to have this type of pleasure which goes against God's law, is to do this thing which goes against God's law, and that's your main goal. How often do you think people are thinking about this, about the fact that they are gonna owe a debt to God with their life now, and they are breaking themselves off from unity with God? You know?
I hope they don't think about it in those terms too much, honestly, because that's gonna instill some like terror.
Okay.
I mean, I've been there. Like, I used to deal with scrupulosity, especially early on. But and the way that I would see God in that framework of mind was like, if I don't go to confession literally right this second right now, lightning's going to hit me. I'm going to die. I'm going to go to hell for all of eternity. That's not a healthy spirituality, So I really encourage people to look at this in relational terms. You love somebody and you offend them. You want to get back together with them, so you just say, "I'm sorry." That's what it is. I mean, we do that in human relationships. I hope, we do that in human relationships. I sin against my friend. I offend him, whatever it is, and I want to make good on it because the friendship is more important to me than my pride. I'm going to go to him and I'm going to say, "I'm sorry that I did this."
Yeah, that's why, I mean, like with the mortal sin thing, for example, right? Like, let's say in relational terms, I'm just going to give an analogy based on that. Let's say the guy didn't take out the trash and it was his responsibility, right? Yeah, it's your responsibility. You got to do it. But is it going to break the relationship because you did that? No, right? I mean, sometimes we think that we did something so small and we think it's a mortal sin, but do you really think that broke off your relationship with God?
Right.
I don't want to say most of the time, but maybe a lot of the time we're just misformed and we need to be
missing the mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so maybe we're not separate from God after doing that, or our relationship isn't completely broken. But if we do that enough times, we can...
You're neglecting, yeah.
We can neglect, and not only neglect, but damage it to the point where it can lead to something grave. Right? And we've had this conversation before. That's why, like, we can't have the attitude of thinking or going into sin with, is this venial or mortal? If it's venial, it's okay for me to do.
Yeah.
Because it still damages your relationship with God. You're still avoiding God's grace. You're still missing an opportunity to choose love over evil. Mm-hmm. The love that's participating in the redemption of Christ, participating in his mission, participating in what he's done to buy us back essentially into a covenantal life with him. So we do that enough times, then we make ourselves vulnerable, a lot easier to fall into something of a grave matter, such as mortal sin. So if someone doesn't take out the trash one week and they say sorry for it, but then they do it the next week, and then the next week, and then the next week, their mom is going to eventually be, very upset with them. And she might be more stern with the child, and the child might respond back even more sternly. And that can lead to a very big argument. And a very big argument that's very heated, it can lead to something that's very, very grave. So, yes, that first initial time, you're not committing a mortal sin. But at the same time, you want to avoid sin in general. Does that mean you have to go to confession for that? No, you don't. Go ask God for forgiveness, go receive the Eucharist and receive his grace. And that does so much more than we think, than we can ever imagine or ever fathom in our minuscule brains. But what that also requires is, though, a heart that actually trusts God, that actually like can trust that He will forgive us for our sins.
Yeah.
And trust means to let go. Trust means lack of control. And if we can learn to trust God, and especially something like this, then we can become more free in our bodies as well as in our understanding of life. Anyway, I know I kind of babbled a little bit, but
No, that was a good illustration actually. Saint Augustine, I think it was Saint Augustine that says, mortal sin is like you getting destroyed by a big boulder. But venial sins could be like a bunch of tiny grains of sand that will end up burying you. So,
Yeah, but that was a good point. Like if someone does something initially that's wrong, we can call that a mistake,
Yeah.
error. But if someone continues to disobey the directions of a household, like what their mom is telling them, or to take out the trash, like you guys brought up with that example, if you continue to do that, you're saying something. You're making a statement about what kind of intentions you have about this person or this rule or who you are in relationship to this person. So now take that and put it into the picture that we have with God, our relationship with God. I know that there's a certain standard for holiness. Let's say I don't follow that standard initially on this initial time. We can call that a mistake or whatever, just like you guys are saying, like a venial sin, not something I have to freak out about or be scrupulous about. But if I knowingly continue to do this over and over, choosing this purposefully over and over, even though it's a venial sin, like Father Tristan's saying, it's going to damage my conscience, my soul, my spirituality, and my relationship with God. But like we're also trying to say that God is in his essence love, and then there's always a return to him. So
even that form of thinking is very legalistic as well, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Father Kito touching this a lot. It's interesting because what you said, how you thought, like when you think of sin in that term, when you think about salvation history and what God has done, you think of, oh, well, God's terror. Well, I actually think the opposite, personally. I think that when I think of sin in that way, a lot of banging.
Is that
outside? But I think
hope
I
they
think
can't
of
hear
just the amount of sheer goodness and love that God has. And like I know he's my father, and I know he wants a relationship with me. I'm just being that,
Punk.
Bad
punk.
boy,
I
yeah.
was gonna say other words,
Yeah.
but they're not
We can
appropriate.
always bleep it out.
Paid content.
no, we know which word you were going to say.
Yeah, we know which
Yeah.
word.
Father Simon, you like?
Look, the talk between like how do we look at sin? Is it this damaging of a relationship, or is it this legal infraction?
Yeah.
It really is both.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when the feeling of relationship with God has diminished, then we ourselves delve into the legal aspects of it, and we start to think of it like, oh, I'm a bad person because of this and that, or I've broken the law of God, or whatever. So Aristotle says this thing in his book on ethics, Nicomachean Ethics. I don't want to turn this into a politics thing, but he's speaking about politics, and he says, well, he's speaking about friendship in relation to politics, and he says friendship should be the real basis of politics, of a polity, because your love for your fellow man will be essentially the best motivator for acting well in society.
For the common.
Yeah. People are not thinking about justice when they're concerned about friendship. They're not so concerned with justice when they're more concerned with friendship. Why? Because, I hope like people don't, with their friends, with their like actual close friends, they're not thinking about like, oh, who has contributed this much to their relationship and who has done the other one? Let's calculate it out. That would diminish the relationship to just this rules-based equality kind of works-based kind of thing, whereas it should be just, we love each other and we desire to do good for each other, and that's why we act this way.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing with the faith versus works.
Yeah, it is.
And St. James makes it very clear that faith without works is dead. So you don't have to focus on the works. You focus on the person. We focus on Jesus, on how much we love him. And the more we love him, the more we're not going to even think about doing these sins. But when you're in that state, you don't love him enough. You're trying to grow in love. Yes, obviously you're going to have to focus on being virtuous and to do certain things. Jesus says, if your arm causes you to sin, cut it off. You have to know these things. So there's a balance. I think that's the whole thing. We have to be spiritually balanced. But if the people are thinking that they are completely destroyed and dead and have completely broken their relationship when they haven't, that's going to be a huge burden on them. And they're not going to be able to reach the level of love in a good, balanced way.
And then the flip side is really interesting too, because you can be somebody theoretically, right, can be morally perfect or almost perfect or whatever, and have no relationship with God.
Yeah.
Well, what is that going to do? This is what St. Paul, the whole letter to the Romans is about that. He ends up saying like nobody's good, but nobody's actually good. Because
all the good that a human being can do cannot pay back the debt.
Yes.
And God had to come and pay it himself in the person of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. One of the things that Father Tristan reminded me of right now was also, if we're talking about what is sin, and then we talk about how we see how God has dealt with sin, one of the things that really stuck with me from seminary in terms of what we would think about like on an obvious individual basis during Holy Hour and stuff, with the kind of reading that I was doing, one of the things that grew to understand more is this question about what is sin. So I look at it kind of the same way that Father Tristan was pointing us in that direction of this history of salvation, this work we call the Bible, all these collection of books. This is really telling us how far God's love goes, how radical his love is, in the sense that you're saying that he created us humans, he surrounded us with the things that we have, with the world that we're living in. We're this kind of creature, we have these kinds of powers, we have this share in his essence, and then he communicated that to us, and then we still said no, and we kept saying no, even though he kept sending people over and over, like he's going to communicate in the gospel for this Sunday with the parable of the wicked tenants. I think that's the gospel for this Sunday. Yeah. And we kept seeing God's messengers, and we kept saying no. And then he still decided to fulfill his covenantal purpose towards us by becoming one of us and then dying on a cross for us, allowing all that to happen, instituting a church for us to continue to inherit everything he has to offer, all of that. And I don't see it as a reason necessarily to just stop at fear of God, obviously, and I know we all agree on that. But what really takes over for me, and what used to take over, like when I would be thinking about scripture in those holy hours, is in the midst of sin, how crazy is God's love? How deep is God's love? And that makes you, at the end of the day, get to the next point of where this conversation can go. It's, yes, what is sin? That should be known, that should be reflected on. Now, how do you stop? Or like, what should bring you to stop? If it's not this, then what would it be? Like, there's this being that doesn't need anything from you, but still allows you to be in a relationship with him. In fact, actively is continuing to call you to be in a relationship with him.
Yeah.
I think I should stop doing these things that are disordering my existence and see what he has to offer.
So let's at least try to help people know the state of their souls. So I want to look at what the Catechism says, because the Church is our teacher, and the Catechism tells us about the 3 conditions of a mortal sin, and it says that one is that an action has to be, a sin has to have grave matter, it has to be committed with full knowledge and with deliberate consent. So if we could just look at these 3 things real quick, just to explain them to people about what, like, if you stole $1, is that grave matter? So like that's what the Catechism starts with. We can start there.
Can you read that about what it says about?
I'm going to read it. Yeah. I actually read this on the episode with Father Patrick, but I'm going to read it again.
Yeah, okay.
Because I also want to say something about it. So it says, grave matter is specified by the 10 commandments, corresponding to the answer of Jesus to the rich young man. Do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not defraud, honor your father and mother. The gravity of sins is more or less great. Murder is graver than theft. One must also take into account who is wronged. Violence against parents is in itself graver than violence against a stranger. So the thing that I'll say, which I read this and I didn't make the connection because I was asking the question. We had a little discussion about whether or not breaking the church fasting laws is a mortal sin, is like would be considered grave matter. And I was suggesting that it is. But the Catechism says that grave matter is specified by the Ten Commandments. So basically, according to that, I don't think it would be. I think, obviously it's wrong to break the church fasting laws, but is it grave matter? According to the church, it says that it's specified by the Ten Commandments. So it's like mortal sins, grave matter has to be breaking of the Ten Commandments.
Or something that has to do with the Ten Commandments, probably.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but I would say even breaking the church's fasting laws, like all sin, you can really categorize it under the Ten Commandments. Right? I think that one would be.
But it's an ecclesiastical law, right?
Yeah. So what's an what's a commandment that's that sounds
Maybe with
ecclesiastical?
worshiping God, maybe the first commandment, or
It would fall under probably that one. Yeah.
yeah.
Like it's you're not putting God above all things. Here.
I think most people don't fast they don't follow the church's fasting laws just because they don't know them.
Yeah.
Most of the time. I mean,
So that goes to the other condition of knowledge.
yeah.
So grave matter.
So grave matter.
Should we just say a bunch of things?
Is speaking about the object, right? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing, and then you also have to take into consideration the circumstances of what you're doing to determine the degree. Right? So yeah, stealing $1 or whatever, stealing like a piece of gum from a 7-Eleven or something. Although don't do it, obviously.
Okay, what if I just chuck this at you right now?
What's higher than grave matter?
As hard as I can, and I'll open the cap just a little bit so you also get wet.
Well, look.
That was evil.
If you're joking around, that's a bad joke, but but if the person is joking around, that means that their intention is not there. But if you really want to hurt him, then
Well, even joking. Okay, let's say joking, right? What if you joke around with somebody in order to laugh with them? Well, that's one thing. Obviously, that's very innocent. What if you're joking around with somebody in order to use them as an object for your entertainment and to laugh at them at their expense? They're both joking, but one is wrong, the other one is not. Now, if it gets to such a point that it's a consistent thing, is that grave matter and on a mortal sin? Almost all the time, no. Can you find a circumstance where it could potentially be one? Probably. Yeah. If you're so much bullying somebody that it's causing them psychological damage. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, I think that one of the problems with this and why a lot of people think that they've committed a grave act is because the church doesn't say, here's a list of grave matter,
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look at an examination of conscience that you find online that a lot of people use, a lot of those sins are not grave, right? But people think they are because they're on an examination of conscience. But the Catechism doesn't list, and it can't. There's a million sins you can do. So we can give a couple examples to help form people, but it's going to be up to the people to know these things.
I just thought about something pretty, I don't know how, but God's grace. The prodigal son.
Mm-hmm.
We could say the prodigal son was living a life living in mortal sin.
Yeah.
Why can we say that? Well, he's not at his father's house, going to mass on Sunday. He's not present in the life of his family. He's also doing, he's living the life of a harlot as a man. I don't know, what's the word for that as a man?
I don't know, bro.
Loose living.
Loose living. Okay, but
There's a word, but
so when he returns and asks for, essentially he's asking for his father's forgiveness, his father accepts him. Well, how does he maintain that? Well, he's at his father's house.
He's back.
He's back home. So, prodigal son's a good reference for mortal sin.
It's
That's what even when I tell people this, I think I've told this to Father Chris too. I'll tell people this in confession all the time. You know, if someone's not going to mass every Sunday, I tell them, okay, like, what do you expect? When we're not in communion with God and His church, we're capable of all kinds of sin, right?
Yeah.
Evil things, very, very evil things. Mankind is capable of doing the most monstrous, atrocities you can even think of. And when we're not part of the life of the church, we're not in communion with God, we're not present and He's not present in our lives, then,
What's to me, okay,
Sorry,
to me,
son, that was a sin.
the more
No, you're
interesting thing about
That's
the prodigal son, and this is going to get back to our discussion about sin and relationship with God, all that stuff, is actually the older son. Because the younger son is reconciled to his dad. They throw a big party. The dad is so happy. This is an image of God, right? How much he rejoices, and all of heaven rejoices when a son or a daughter of God reconcile with him. Okay. But then you've got the older son that's there, never left, never took his inheritance, never sinned. Okay, and that's how he presents himself, and it seems like the dad kind of confirms that too. And he's a booma. Like he does not go to the party. He wants nothing to do with it. He's upset, sour-faced, whatever, a Debbie Downer type. Okay, and then the dad goes to him and tries to say, like, come on, like, why don't you come rejoice with us? This is a family gathering. Like, we're all together now. We're happy. We're supposed to be rejoicing together because there's been a reconciliation. And he just doesn't want anything to do with it because he said, all this time I've been obedient to. I've done everything that you've wanted. I've never left your house, and you've never thrown me a party. So what does that say? Even though he's more like morally or legally perfect, his heart is bad. His heart is corrupt. Because his moral perfection is so that he can earn brownie points, or it's not well ordered. It's not ordered towards a relationship with the Father. It's not so that he can be in the Father's house. It's so that he can have a party thrown for him.
So that's like the people that just go to confession just so that they can check off a box.
Just checking off, or mass, or anything else.
Yeah.
So the older son, his situation is especially sad because he's at the house, but he's still an orphan.
Yeah.
He says, in the passage, he says, all these years I have worked for you.
Yeah.
So he was a son, but he only saw himself as a servant.
Yeah.
Like in a marriage, in marriage, unfortunately, and I hope people don't go through this. In a marriage, that things are starting to dwindle when they start competing for each other. Who does more work in the house? I go to work all day. What do? You do nothing. The husbands say to their wives, or the wife will say, I'm at home all day, or I do these things, or I do that. And they start comparing how much work they contribute. That's a legalizing of the relationship, of the house, of the home. Instead of, well, I go to work so that I can provide my family with these things. And I do these things at home so that I can provide this kind of home for, these people, my family members, etc. I do it out of love.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing it because it's a duty that I have to check off.
Yeah.
And Prodigal son, every time confession comes up, if it's in a meeting, someone's asking about it at a youth group, whatever, it's a masterpiece for the stages and development and purpose of confession, like from A to Z. It's almost as if Jesus knew what he was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So the older son, is he living then in mortal sin? Or is that the wrong question to ask? Is that even thinking about my mortal sin and my venial, is that too much? Is that really too legalistic? Like, is that a healthy way of looking at, scripture?
Well, I mean, the church, teaches us about being in the state of grace. So there's being in the state of grace and being in the state of mortal sin. I mean, the way that I see it is that if you're in the state of grace, then you are on your way to heaven. Like, how people say, like, oh, I was saved on this day, and so I know that I'm going to go to heaven, but then they just ignore every other rule, and, they can do whatever they want. I think there is a way to know if you're saved, more or less, which is if you're in the state of grace, and if you're truly formed according to the church. That means that you can receive the Eucharist. This is how important the Eucharist is. And I'm happy that people take it very seriously, but sometimes they're in the state of grace, but they don't receive. So if you're in the state of grace, that means you're not in the state of mortal sin. You could have venial sin, but you're still in the state of grace. And you have a lot of work to do, but but I do think that, yeah, it could be very legalistic to think about it that way, but the church does present us with these ideas.
Terms.
So can I give an opinion that I'm a little like apprehensive to give? I think people commit mortal sins way less often than we think, and I think us too. Okay,
I think that's the whole point of
That's
this.
a very, very like
I agree.
obvious and good thing to say.
Yeah.
okay, good,
Big time.
I'm only apprehensive in saying it because I don't want anybody to fall into a presumption. That's the other temptation.
Or like, I guess I'm good. No.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, the devil is the devil. He's always after us. He's a roaring lion, always seeking someone to devour, as St. Peter says in the New Testament.
So
that's true.
Yeah.
But mortal sin is grave matter, knowing that it's a sin and doing it with the full act of the will.
Full knowledge, yeah. Full act of the will.
Which means essentially, and what is a mortal sin? As you kind of said in the beginning, it's rejecting God. This is what it is. It's rejecting God willfully and knowingly. How often do we do that? So if I'm really tempted to take this piece of gum from 7-Eleven, and again, nobody do that, but if I'm really tempted by it, am I thinking about, I'm rejecting my divine creator in doing this right now. I know that I'm doing that. I'm going to do it anyways.
Yeah.
With the full act of the will.
Yeah.
Uninterrupted by my passions completely,
It's like evil though. Like scary.
Well, that's what it is.
I know. I'm saying like, I just got the gibbers.
Right. So another way I like to think about grave matter is malice.
Yeah.
If it's
part of it.
Intentionally malicious, then I think it's a much bigger deal.
Can we just real quick go through the 10 Commandments and just give a couple examples of what we think based on our priestly formed consciences would be considered grave matter? And this is, not saying anything about the person's intention or...
That would be fun.
Okay.
I think I'm a pretty scrupulous person that I need to work on.
Okay, so let's start.
But okay.
So you say your scrupulous idea, and then Father Nikita will tell you that that's too scrupulous. So the first commandment. What would be considered a grave offense against the first commandment? Making a sacrifice to another god. Right?
Reading a horoscope. Is it?
Not really.
No, I don't think that would be grave matter. It's bad. It's not a good idea.
How about saying or applying it to your life?
Yeah, like if someone knowingly and freely makes decisions about their life, knowing that they're they should know God, but instead they go to the horoscope to depend on the direction of their life in an active way.
Yeah.
But I think 95% of people, maybe 99% of people don't actually understand that.
Okay, I'm gonna give you much less, or obviously tarot cards or readings, this
all bad.
weird media stuff,
Going to a psychic.
Yeah, 100%. That's 100%.
But again, just
that's great.
Context again, for people that are listening to this, maybe they just heard tarot cards right now and they remembered that they did it, and now they maybe won't go receive.
Yeah, don't forget
on Sunday. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
What's the context? That there's God and he's done all this for you, and you know what the significance of the cross means and all that kind of stuff, and then you're still doing this and you're free to do it. No one's forcing you. And then even then it's I don't know what your conscience is when you're going into this. Maybe you weren't free. Maybe something was plaguing your conscience at that moment. Maybe
somebody forced you to go or something like that. Strongly encouraged you or something.
Can I give one that's way more relevant, I think?
Yeah.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this is grave matter, and I think that it's a mortal sin. Okay. You know that you need to go to Mass on Sunday. You know that you need to, but there's your favorite, there's a
sports game.
It's football. There's a football game on. You have to watch it, and you watch it instead of going to Mass. Definitely mortal sin.
Yeah.
Grave matter.
So
that's an application of this one, I think. I mean, it's an application of the third.
This and the third.
Yeah.
But also choosing another god over God.
True.
I think football can become a god.
Imagine knocking out two sacraments in one. Two commandments.
Two commandments in one action. Yeah.
Two commandments in one action.
Yeah.
That's crazy work.
I agree with that. That was a good one.
Okay, how about the second? Thou shalt not take the name of God in vain. If you say, like when I give this example to kids, and I say if you say, "Oh my God," and they say, you said it, as if I committed a mortal sin at that moment. That's not a mortal sin.
At least they know.
Yeah. At least they know and they take it seriously. What would you think?
You know what I think the best application of the second commandment is, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Okay, it's not just saying OMG, although we shouldn't be saying that, right? And like, we could say, don't swear and things like that for sure. But even more so, it's more sinister than that, I think, which is that we're attributing something to God for our own benefit where it doesn't have anything to do with him. We're calling upon God's authority for our own personal benefit when we were not supposed to be doing that. So for example, when I think it's really bad when parents tell their kids, "Oh, don't sleep with your socks on. Jesus is going to get mad at you."
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Or don't leave a sandal facing
Facing
the bottom
upward,
facing up.
Yeah.
Or like don't do an actual bad thing because Jesus is going to get mad at you. And they make their child think that that's a grave matter and a grave offense against God.
Whereas in reality, they just don't want their kid to do this because it annoys them or something.
Or how about wanting someone to believe you so bad that you
say, "I swear,"
you
swear on.
Yeah, swearing is a very, very serious thing. Swearing on something, like there's actually a place for that where you or in court or like
oath making,
but like oath making is very, very serious.
Yeah, very serious.
As priests, we make these oaths.
This was the daily gospel for yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Anything more than that is
so they exist, right? But if I'm gonna, swear on something like, I don't know, like you use football as an example. Well, I caught the ball, but it looked like it was incomplete. It hit the ground, but like, no, I know that I caught it. I'm gonna swear on that. I think that's a grave matter. I think that's a big deal. But the thing is, well, with intention and like kind of the accidental habitual way of saying that might not be moral. Maybe you've grown to make the habit of saying these words, but you genuinely understand that it's wrong and you're trying to break it. I think that's a work in progress, and when you can recognize that, then the weight is, I think taken off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I had this problem as in high school especially, and then I would swear, I would say OMG a lot, and then eventually though I realized like it was wrong, and then when I would want to stop, I would catch myself doing it and recognize it and say, okay, well I just did it.
So would that be considered a mortal sin, you think?
I don't think
so. Yeah, I think that most people, when they say, I cuss and I say God's name in vain, I'm going to say this opinion that I don't think it's a mortal sin most of the time.
If it's like a really bad, long-standing habit and it's like, it's mitigated. I mean, that's the teaching of the Catholic Church, is that if it's like under the category of addiction or like a really bad long-standing habit that you're trying to fight, the level of guilt is mitigated.
So why? Because that talks to the point of the freedom part of your conscience or your will to be able to have enough like discipline to say yes or no to something.
You're not free. I mean,
if you're plagued by addiction, it's controlling you.
The unfortunate thing about that fact is not that it's not like, oh, I'm Scott. I'm free, I can do whatever I want to now because it's an addiction. No, the unfortunate thing about it is that you're actually a slave. And like, well, that sucks. You don't want to be a slave. So anyway,
okay,
fourth.
No, I want to talk about the third commandment a little bit more. I know it's obviously it's a sin to mismatch, but I get this question a lot as a priest. Maybe you guys do too. It's people who might think that because they work on Sunday or they do household chores or they do this, that they're now
in the state of mortal sin,
breaking the Sabbath gravely, and they are in the state of mortal sin. What do you guys think?
I think it's very simple. I think if it's necessary work, you can do it. Like a kid that does their homework, for example, if they, you didn't do it Friday, Saturday, you got to do it Sunday. Don't use the Sabbath as an excuse to not do your homework. If it's necessary, then do it. If it's not necessary, do it another day.
If I have people telling me that they are in mortal sin because they were sick and couldn't go to Mass on Sunday, every time that comes up, or because of a significant reason, a grave reason that they couldn't come to Mass on Sunday, every time that comes up, I always correct them and let them know, like, you're good.
Like, you're in the state of grace.
Don't worry about this.
Yeah.
Okay. Fourth, we good?
Honor your father and your mother.
Honor your father and mother.
Very neglected commandment these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no more respect.
No more respect.
Sorry, mom and dad.
Kids these days.
Kids these days.
But yeah,
Us,
There's-
we've never
Yeah.
disobeyed this commandment.
especially the teachers. Oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
authority
100%
figures and stuff.
But
Yeah.
you know, I've been very guilty of this all my life. I can sorry, mom and dad. You know,
Hopefully they forgive
What's-
you.
but as well as
Just love your parents, man.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, this is, bro, this could be a whole episode, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
About, you know,
Yeah.
marriages. Like,
honestly, we should
like,
have a whole episode
like
about this.
if you don't marry the person that your mom and dad wants,
Mortal
is that
sin?
you breaking the commandment in a grave way? Like, obviously not.
Does this
right?
commandment give your parents to be total the ability to be complete tyrants without any
During
moral
the-
guilt whatsoever?
During the marriage class,
This is
like,
crazy.
I emphasize very strongly to not have their parents be involved in their lives.
It's the most important thing.
It's like I visit, love your parents, spend time with your parents, don't neglect them in that way, respect them, listen to them, but never, ever, ever, like I say, mention your problems to them between
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
That's another episode.
That's another
Yeah,
episode.
I think we should
But I
make
have to
this a whole
finish.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they do that. I have to say this.
Yeah.
They're doing it because they love you. Like they're gonna get involved in your problems because they care about you and love you. Because there's something that's part of this fourth commandment that evokes love between father and son, father and daughter,
Yeah.
mother son, mother daughter. Anyway, avoid that. But yeah, honor your father and mother.
Thou shalt not kill.
Yeah. So
So is murder the only thing that can be a
It's
grave
the only
matter
mortal sin.
in this?
no, I think there's malicious kinds of gossip that kill people's reputations.
Yeah.
I think
And
I think there's just like
A lot of things.
serious mistreatment of people.
Yeah.
That can
Bullying.
yeah.
Like
bullying.
you were mentioning it earlier.
Very, very, very angry outburst.
Yeah.
That, yeah, like
I think if we say it like
fist fights and stuff.
objectifying a person, and now we usually talk about that in the more like lustful way, but you can objectify people in a lot of ways,
In business.
Yeah,
For
in
sure.
business, and many other ways. Turning somebody into an object in your mind and treating them as a thing as opposed to a person is wrong. I read this at that English words. I read that part in the Gospel of John the other day. I think it's John 8, where the woman is caught in adultery, and they present her to Jesus, and they say, "What would you?" Moses in the law told us to condemn such or to stone such. What would you do? It's just that word. I remember it really like came off to me when I was reading it the other day, because they referred to her as such, like a thing.
Like Moses commanded us to stone this thing. What would you do
Yeah.
with this thing?
Exactly like that. You
Wow.
know?
That's really bad.
Why? Because she's an adulterous woman, and she went from being a human person to a thing.
That's
Out of sense because of her sin,
Yeah.
which is horrible. That's
Unfortunate.
exactly what
Yeah.
Jesus. That's why Jesus
Yeah.
said, "Whoever's without sin, let him cast the first stone," and they all walked away.
Yeah.
At least they walked away.
Better walk away.
yeah.
We gotta eat. We still have a few commandments left, so maybe we should like talk about how to approach
Can we
this.
talk
'Cause
about
they're-
one? Or the last two? Coveting.
Why don't we talk about
That-
it while we eat?
Okay, we can talk about
Yeah.
it while we eat.
All right. All right.
I'm just worried about what Father Andy's gonna say because he's a hater,
Good luck.
But he did post his first Dolma flip video the other day.
It was pretty good.
It was good. It was good. I was very proud of him. What is it?
You got him on the trend, right?
Yeah.
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 I'm calling him a trend.
He said it?
It's just
He's
the
the father
trends,
of
yeah.
Dolma
So
flipping.
thank you to Melanie Mira. She's a
Oh, this is
food.
from Melanie?
Yeah.
Cool, I know her.
She does food recipes and stuff on her social media. So we're gonna tag her. Thank you. And she made us veggie dolma. And I thought it was gonna be flipped and ready, honestly, but I guess
No. You should
I'm
know
the
better.
designated.
You should know better.
I've never done one seated, but we're gonna try. Okay.
Watch them.
And I want you guys to rate it.
Bro.
Rate the flip. Okay. Ready? Jesus help me.
I'm very nervous. I'm just like
No,
sitting
no,
here
no.
waiting.
I got this.
This is really concerning.
Okay, ready? There you go.
Not bad at all.
That was
Like
solid,
that?
bro.
Not bad at all.
Let's see the form.
I'm enjoying the sound.
Oh,
Oh wow.
oh, oh.
Rate the flip. Rate the flip. Oh wow, this looks amazing.
Flip solid 8.5.
Really?
Yeah.
The flip is solid, but the juice is even more solid.
Father Andy gave himself a 9.2, which I think was a good rating. Wow, that was
that was in the-
clean.
That was in the 8s for sure. 8.4.
okay. I'll take an 8.
No, but sitting down, you have to take that
Sitting
into
down is different.
as a factor. So maybe even higher.
Maybe
This
even higher.
this
huh?
smells amazing, man. Why don't we dig in?
Look at the potatoes.
All right. So we decided, for those watching at home, that we're gonna do the 6th
through
and
10.
9th.
6 through 10.
Yeah, but specifically 6 and 9 is gonna get its own episode. All right, let me get your plate, Father Tristan.
Oh, thank you.
Gonna put you some. You don't care, like you're just
You're
just a chill guy.
Yeah, but like some potatoes, you know.
Oh yeah, potatoes, man.
And I think that's enough.
You want to grab for you guys?
Yeah, yeah, fine.
I can
That's
grab
enough.
for everyone.
That's
but-
enough. That's enough. That's enough. Thank
It's
you.
enough.
Oh, thank you.
Here, you got it. Here.
You did too?
Do you want an eggplant? Like this?
Oh yeah, for those of you that are
yeah.
tuning in, we decided that we're going to talk about the next commandments
Later on.
later on.
Yeah.
So,
Is that good?
Because to do them justice, you know?
we have
Yeah.
to give them justice.
So tune in to future episodes. You know?
You know.
You know?
But Father Chris had a fun game for us to play right now.
So
actually.
yeah, let's play this game where we say our favorite cultural guy names and we go around and you can't repeat one of the names that someone already said or you're out. Okay?
Is there a time limit?
No, there's not a time limit, but like you
Wait.
have to be ready to go.
Are we doing like Chaldean guy names?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Guys, this is amazing
So-
Dolma, bro.
I can start first.
Yeah, that's actually fun.
All right? Are you guys ready?
Okay, yeah.
Do it.
All right. Fawaz.
Nice. Me?
Yeah.
Okay. موفق.
Saad.
Ghaith.
مؤيد.
مظفر.
Nice. Raghib.
Rafa.
Roni.
Yeah. Oh, that's like crosses cultures, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Bashar.
Ramiz.
Rafid.
Bassam.
Those are all Father Tristan's uncles, by the way.
Now it's
That we
Father
just
Simon's
named.
uncle.
Oh, yeah.
Bassam.
Ra'ad.
We already said that, didn't we?
No.
Oh, I think so.
Rafael.
Um.
What's the guy's name?
Faris.
I'm going to go with Latif.
That's good.
Good one.
Well, I'm gonna do a derivative of yours, Firaz.
I like that.
Jafar.
Jafar is not a Chaldean name, bro.
Shlemun.
Oh.
So we just accepted Jafar.
No, it's okay. I'll be out. Someone has to be out. I want to eat.
Okay, building off of Shnemun, Polis.
Okay, good. Saeed.
Wow, that's a crazy one. That's a crazy. Yeah. Emmanuel.
Good biblical.
Mikhail.
And,
Putros.
no, too long, bro.
No, man.
Come on, man. We gotta.
That's
We
fine.
said there's no time.
That's fine.
No, bro.
There is like 10, like
There
5
is,
seconds.
dude.
Okay, that's
I have
not-
one. Micha.
I say 3 seconds.
Micha.
Micha.
Okay. I'm going to go with Najib.
Hazim.
Hekmet.
I'm going to go with Muhannad.
You said Hikmatan.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
See ya. Gone.
Yeah, I'm gone, bro.
Bye. Okay. Now let's do 3 seconds between you two. It's like a
No,
speed
no,
round.
no. That's scary.
Let's do 3
Okay.
seconds. I'm gonna count.
Ready?
Who's going to go first?
You're next in line.
Yeah, so it's me.
Okay.
Talal.
Faraj.
Shliha.
We gotta give him another chance. Shliha is not.
I know. If you find one person named that, then you win the whole thing.
I think I could find somebody. Do you want me to say another one?
No,
Okay.
I think you just lose.
Basid.
I was thinking Bassett.
Basil. I'll go with Adil.
Ashur.
Chaldean guy name, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Amr.
Sedhead.
I mean, one guy, bro.
Sergon.
Wow, that was my next one. Sedmed.
Oh, wow, it's actually good.
Ibrahim.
Good one. Adam.
Adam. The name Adam.
Yeah.
Afram. What'd you say?
GG, bro.
That has to stay in, by the way.
What did you say? I didn't even hear it.
That's
No,
fine.
no, it's okay.
We'll talk about it later. I lost.
Bro, this is good Dolma, man. Honestly, like if I had,
This is very good.
like, I would
Steal
choose
that.
this over a lot of meat dolmas. Very, very good.
I disagree. I'm like I'm not against veggie dolma. It's good. This is one of the best veggie dolmas I've had. But there's something about meat dolma that's just.
I know,
a lot
but like
Yeah.
a lousy meat
This
dolma.
is better flavor than most dolma that you'll ever have.
fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, whether there's meat or not,
Put a
the,
few more
the flavors
pieces
are
in there.
great.
Fair enough.
Thank
I
you, God
guess.
bless.
Yeah.
And it was made by a young Chaldean girl, which is actually pretty cool, you know.
Continuing the culture.
I just don't like the texture of veggie dolma.
Like it's too soft.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like need to feel some substance, right?
A little more. But it's good. This is very,
But the flavor's
good
amazing.
veggie- This is how veggie dolma was made.
Yeah.
And for veggie dolma, it's very good.
Don't people usually have it cold or no? Am I wrong? Veggie dolma.
Maybe that's how Al Qashnaya do it.
I don't know, man.
I like cold leftover dolma a lot. Yeah.
This was a longer episode, I think.
So
But I wonder what
310.
Father Andy's gonna say about this episode.
He's gonna say something.
Next time, when he's on, we're gonna talk about penances. That's gonna be fun.
All right.
I like how spicy it is.
Yep.
It's like not too spicy, but it's like good. All right.
Cool.
Peace out, everyone. Thanks for watching. Don't sin.
God bless y'all.